In America, a silent action is emerging, apart from the explicit criticism from outlets like the Wall Street Journal, aimed at moderating the Trump administration's dangerous tariff plans, which could harm the U.S. economy. This effort is being led by industrial and financial actors. The European press is not giving much attention to this action, partly because it is discreet to achieve results and partly because it does not believe, or does not want to believe, that Donald Trump can be balanced. However, the U.S. branch of my research group believes he can be and recommends that European political actors negotiate with Washington without excessive opposition, relying on Trump's internal moderating reaction. Despite personal likes or dislikes, he is in an excitable but correctable phase. This recommendation, aimed at calming France and channeling Germany's awakening into the Euro-Atlantic vector, aligns with Giorgia Meloni's explicit position, substantively supported by Ursula von der Leyen. In summary, my American colleagues, mostly centrist Republicans like me, advise against betting against America, even though it seems to be rebelling against the world it created in terms of the international market. They believe America is bigger than Trump and will bring him back to a rational path. As researchers specializing in scenario analysis, we asked ourselves, what are the probabilities? The analyses coming from America are concerning. If global supply chains are excessively disrupted due to tariffs, the U.S. could enter a recession complicated by rising inflation. This is why the Federal Reserve is not lowering rates and fears a near future of enormous difficulty for monetary policy. Certainly, the Trump administration fears this scenario of political impoverishment. If too many people become impoverished, the Republican Party would struggle to maintain its narrow majority in Congress in the midterm elections of fall 2026, and Trump himself would become a lame duck. Currently, polls do not yet show such a trend. However, more selective research finds its beginnings in the electorate, a potential reason for rebellion among centrist Republicans who, though a minority in the congressional delegation, have blocking power. The heavy decline in U.S. stock markets since the beginning of the year is worrying retirees, who rely on it for a significant portion of their income. Massive and sudden layoffs in the public sector, justified by an out-of-control public debt during the Biden administration, are alarming younger populations. While necessary for financial order, these moves could be better analyzed and less traumatic or hasty. Many U.S. industrial actors also fear the decline of American brands due to widespread global hostility. Even in the arms sector, some nations have already decided to stop purchasing F-35s, fifth-generation fighters, and other weapons that can be replaced by European systems. Trump responded by announcing the sixth-generation F-47 fighter, Boeing. However, I think it will arrive later than the British-Italian-Japanese GCAP, already in development, Horizon 2035-40, and more freely marketable than the U.S. product. Of course, American technological superiority is unchallengeable in the short and medium term, but in the long term, it could be by the rest of the G7. Indeed, some U.S. think tanks are warning the administration that the EU plus UK and Canada plus Japan could have greater economic and technological power than America within about 15 years if the U.S. exaggerates negative pressures on allies. Others warn that Canada could join the EU, and London could return via a special agreement, under exploration, making America truly small. Still, others suggest rebalancing trade flows between America and the world in negotiated and balanced ways, adding that otherwise, the dollar would lose its current conditioning power, a form of seigniorage, significantly reducing internal American wealth. More geopolitically, some explain that Beijing's recent moves, courting major Western industries and initiating the process to recognize the yuan as a global currency, are motivated precisely by such scenarios. America without Europeans and other Pacific allies is small. This alarm activity directed at the Trump administration has begun to produce some results, such as the shift from generalized tariff threats against allies to a doctrine of rebalancing flows based on the principle of reciprocity. However, the enormous problem here is the Europeans' difficulty in giving up trade barriers in certain sectors, such as agriculture or environmental standards on imports. Trump believes rebalancing is possible through the threat of retaliation. But he should consider that Europeans face challenges in suddenly removing all barriers to American goods. So, the wisest action would be a pre-negotiation within the G7 to precisely define the tariffs and barriers that can be removed or adjusted and those that cannot be immediately removed because they require compensation. In other words, applying a functionalist method among allies to strengthen rather than break the alliance. In conclusion, the positive probability exists but is conditioned by the rationality of geopolitical actors, loaded with one priority: strengthening the alliance of democracies to make it more powerful than authoritarian regimes, conditioning them. Italy? Global.